Lukman, where are you from?
So I am from Nigeria. Um, well, I was born in, well, my family hail from, because Nigeria is divided and segmented into states. So I believe there are 36 states, names of whom I cannot pronounce or even remember. But two in particular do definitely stay in memory. One of which is where my grandparents or my greater Ho family hail from, and the other was where I grew up in the earlier and most fondest part of my childhood memories.
So let's put some names. Where the area you've grown up in, or the town?
So
What's that
my
called?
family hail from the states, Ogun State. No, Osun State, and yeah, from a tribe called from a warrior tribe called Mudakeke. So they were known for having very feverish passions for any physical doings that they might be engaged in, and
Does that mean war?
well, any physical doings they might be engaged in. It may involve hunting spirits. It may involve two people, trying to battle it out. But I don't know. I wasn't there. I can scarcely recollect it. But from what I heard, they were very passionate folks. Yeah, very enthusiastic about whatever they did. Equivalent to Irishmen. So yeah, very very passionate people. Yeah, but my upbringing was mostly, if not all, primarily done in Ogun State, which is where my grandparents currently live. So yeah.
And describe the town, the actual town you were in, and your house and growing up. Give us paint a picture for us.
Okay, if I had to paint a picture, imagine that there was a one-story building where you have a very long corridor. You can sit down the corridor, and the door which you are seeing it from, you can also see the other end of the corridor through the door which you are seeing it out from. And sometimes lined up along the corridor are people. People engaged in their own and also doings. Because Nigeria, I think people would probably describe it as a third world, or yeah, I don't know whatever category they would chunk it in, but it's just a corridor where there are alternate rooms, and the first few rooms belonged to the property owners, my grandparents. So this house was or this big building of houses, or little pockets of mini houses or mini homes, you could say, are just I don't want to say lent out, or just almost like an apartment, or just single story apartment building where everyone has room numbers, and then they rented it out from the landlord, and the landlord, like I said, was my grandfather. So the first few sections were the first two on the left were my grandfather's. The first two on my right were shared alongside with my grandmother. So my grandmother had the second, while the kids generally had the first. And yeah, so my earliest memories of it, and why it's so fond in my recollections, is it's down to how communal everything felt. It was like you lived in a modern village instead of the typical village styling and of the buildings and the architecture. It was just a big building where everyone knew each other, and everyone knew what each other did. Everyone knew who each other were, and everyone knew where roughly each other were. And as a child, they said it takes a village to raise a child. My grandfather managed to build a village in one building, and quite frankly, raised more than one kid. So yeah, so and the reasons for why I lived with my grandparents was because my father was trying to settle healing in himself in England. So during the time of my parents trying to find a source of income and get a grounding for themselves, a stable foothold in England, I was sharing my living ship with my grandparents, and my grandfather. Whew, very strict man, very disciplinarian. He's like an Irishman who just wants work done.
All right.
So yeah, it's quite it's quite the contrast.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, it's a good thing, because you spare the rod, you spoil the child, right? And yeah, I think I would have been inadequately spoiled if if not for my grandfather. So yeah, I think I owe a lot to him for my
What's your grandfather's name? You've name checked him a lot so far.
Yeah, so his name is, I believe, was Rashid, but we never call older folks by their first name. So the name that the town gave them was sort of Baba Salah and Mama Salah, and Salah is more like a festival. So it's more it's a alias. So mother of festivities, father of festivities, and it was yeah. So that's what we call them, but we never ever uttered the first name. I just happened to know his first name through documents I happened to find in his room.
So I would never have called my grandfather Jim O'Hallow, and you just wouldn't, would you? So
you wouldn't.
Well, my grandchildren don't call me Michael. So is that more or less the same way? You've got these different names you're talking about.
Well, like there's a lot of similarities shared between both, but I think the distinct nuances between the both are the fact that aliases are just sort of adopted from just normal day-to-day jests. So sometimes I could be like, Michael, instead of calling you Michael, I'd be like, oh, Mikey. And then Mikey could morph into a Mike. And then M.I. could morph into some other name. Maybe not Susan, but, so some other name. And it's this morphing of name throughout, and then there will be one that particularly sticks, and that would be what you're known by. So the preceding generation would call you that name, and then because they've grown up using that name, and then they produce offsprings, and their generation also know you by that name. So that name just sticks. It sticks like sellotape.
So we're talking a lot about your grandfather here, but
Indeed.
It's really, really interesting. Well, so did he have a lot of respect in the society and community? Was he an eminent figure?
Yes. I think, from even my most recent recollections when I went in the more recent, so he has always been a man to which you can take your arguments with, and he would help you solve it. Because, that's how, and people, like I said, you don't utter his name. Names are very important in Nigeria. The ability or the happening of not uttering one's name is just respect coalesced in just everyday speak. So if I can't say your name, that just shows you're a man to be so much respected, that your name should always escape my mouth.
Education. I know you left Nigeria when you were 11, so
Indeed.
You would have gone to school between the age of 5 and 11?
Yeah, so the name of the school was Rock Foundation. And it was a it was a great school. It was a great school. I went back, and I think things change so much that when you go back to places which you have held so statically in memory, you go back, you compare them with what you have in your head, and then you start to see the differences. It's like spot the difference, but when the difference is bloomingly obvious. It's like I don't know, getting a black Versace bag, and then you purchase another one, which is a red one, and then the people ask me, you spot the difference, and you're like, it might be the color, but I'm not sure. There are quite a lot of differences, but I remember it was a school probably full of 200 at max, or 100 students, between that ballpark, and I wasn't the best or the studious of students. So my grandfather was very strict, but because of the environment Nigeria is, it's a very playful and jovial environment. So whenever we came back from school, we had time into our own work, but majority of the time was expended in playing moments. So we played in front of the house, where you get like a piece of cloth, you put it, and that would be one part of the post. You get another piece of cloth, put to make it as another part of the post, and that would be your goal post. And it would have like tiny little plastic balls which we kick around to as football. And our games were very diverse. They were broad, and they were enjoyable in their spending. But I think my most enjoyable moments, because I'm such a glutton, being a glutton since birth, it's the food. It's the food. So every time before you wake up, or while you're waking up, there's a lady, a hawker, I think that's what you would know her as. She would carry this great big vat on her head, and how they balance it on their head. If you've probably seen pictures in Africa, they use a piece of cloth, they wrap it around. It's called an oshuka. They wrap it around, place it atop their head, and that creates like a sort of a balancing beam for that great big vat. Contained within this vat is pap. So we call it cocoa. So in the morning, the first thing that would wake me up, because my grandfather would always try to wake me up, and that would just sneak away, away from work, and then go back to bed. You'd be like, "Iyo ni Coco today," or "Iyo ni Coco ambi." So that just means like the mother of Coco has arrived, and probably come and get yours, and stuff like that. And I would, because my grandmother's room was directly next to mine, rush out, go to my grandmother. Can I have 5 naira? Can I have 10 naira? And then so I can go and get some cocoa. I'll grab some 10 naira, wash my dish, zoom out of the out of the block of homes, or the block of rooms, zoom out, and then give the Yoni cocoa the cocoa. And the special part of it is that when you have cocoa is basically like a white sort of custody substance. Once you have that with sugar and milk, if I had to describe it, it's like a masseuse that massages and warms the heart. So the esophagus is very close in placing to the heart as the food travels down. And as it travels down, it leaves a trail of very gentle and tender warmth. And that trail just comes down and it hits your tummy, boom. And yes?
No, sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but you clearly have a love of language. I was going to say your degree is in science.
Yeah, yes.
I say that as an arts graduate. But you clearly have a love of language. You're an articulate young man. Did you learn a love of language and early on in your life?
Oh God, no! My early speak was quite terrible. It was tragic, in fact. I had the English skills of a Spanish farmer. So it was by all metric of English speaking, it wasn't great. And during my early time, especially that I spent at Millwards, I don't think I had any noticeable placements in English assessments. I scarcely read, I scarcely spoke it well, and so it's made for quite a bad situationship. But the reason for why you might have picked on my eloquence is because I have efforted in trying to curate a schema of speaking for myself. So if I hear something, a particular pronunciation of a syllable or a sounding or something that I like, I would add it to my vocabulary and try to, would you call it vocabulary, or to my elocution or elocutionness? I don't know how you would say it. But
What's your first language?
My first language, Yoruba. Yeah, so English is my second. If there's a particular and sound which I like, I would add it to mine. For example, the letter O. The letter O and the phonetic pronunciation of O. So one O, you could say O, that's just a normal enunciation. But O, that's an alternate, and it sounds quite refined. I like refined speak, and engage myself in quite a lot of readings as well.
When's the last time you were in Nigeria?
The last time I was in Nigeria, I think could be furthered to about 7 years ago.
It's a long time.
Well, it's a long time, but my math skills are rusty. My math skills are as good as my Spanish skills. Bonjour. Bonjour is not Spanish. So it's been quite a long time.
Will you ever go back?
Of course. Home is where the memory points and where the memory compasses. So I do hope to go back, but I think as a millennial, we scarcely even own a table and a chair. Needless to say, board on a plane trip, they would set you back, if not a grand and a half, 2,000.
Because that's one of the themes, as I said, your interview number 56 or 75. That's one of the themes we ask people about home, and different people give different answers. But it's interesting that you say, "Where's home when you go back?" And you've said about being to people who don't know, what did you mean when you said, as a millennial, do you see things from a different economic prism?
Oh, absolutely. You said like economic prism, more like economic prison, because you're just standing there behind the cages, and like this, the cages are metal holdings of debt and shackles and God knows what else. So it's because there's so much you need to do. And you need to get up, start driving, learning how to drive, try to climb the property ladder with heels on, and also try to engage in visitings that may set you back quite a noticeable amount. So there's a lot to do. There's just not enough to do it.
So in many ways, so here, I went to St. Mark's School, I got my A-levels, I went to university in Scotland for 4 years, I got a full grant. Sorry to tell you this, but for 4 years, and I got travelling expenses.
Travelling expenses?
Yes, sorry about that.
My goodness, I don't even own a table and a chair, you're talking about travelling expenses.
Wow. And that's a 40-year difference in education, two people from Harlow. So we have slightly drifted off the subject, but do you have any regrets about going to university?
Do I have any regrets about going to university? I think the regrets would be accountably my own. The faulting would be accountably my own, and it would be that I didn't engage in as many.
The financial.
Financially,
yeah.
The only regret is I was broke for the whole through.
Oh, yeah. so somebody who is year 11 at Stewards or year 13 at Harlow College, what's your advice to them?
Well, I think try to work out a scheme where you can, I don't want to say juggle, but balance, and try to do so with fine-tunedness. Balance some doingship or some ventureship, which could be some employment, like some little employment to get you by, or some part-time work that you could get in the line of field which you'd like to find yourself in. Try to engage in additional doings that are aside from your main scholarly doings.
Because the MP for Harlow, Robert Halfon, is the chair of the Education Committee in Parliament, and a very big advocate on apprenticeships.
Indeed, yes.
Do you think that is a world that people should go down?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. At the end of the day, we're all trying to accrue for ourselves skills for the job. And you might hold a degree, but that's not a skill. Anybody can hold a piece of A4 paper and call it a degree. I've seen some people print it out of a printer and say, I got a degree. Cute. Most people have degrees, but the only way you can delineate yourself from the pack of degree holders is by skillship. If you have the skills gained from whichever means, it could be apprenticeship, it could be like I said, the other doings which you do alongside your academic doings. It's still going to place you very, very well against those degree holders. Degrees, like I said, everyone has them, and some people, and it's such an overwhelming amount. The only way for you to discriminate yourself in a good way, in a good lighting, is by having the skills which would be pertinent to the line of work which you hope to do.
Ask you, when Connie, Rhounda Connor, interviewed Connie, she describes herself as Anglo-Italian. She's second generation. I'm second generation Anglo-Irish, etc. How do you describe yourself?
Nigerian British or British Nigerian, I don't know, because
Sounds like you never really thought about it.
No, I never really thought about it, but I speak like an Englishman, and sometimes I think like a Nigerian. So I'm a bit of both. But,
and where's home?
Where's home?
Finally.
Well, home is where the memory is compass. So wherever the compass is pointing. And my compass has, let's say, it's fork-spiked, and it's pointing in two different directions. One, England, and the other, Nigeria.
Lukman, thank you very much for your time.
And my appreciation is yours, and likewise.